The aged apostle sighed as he picked up his quill and stared at the piece of parchment in front of him, and slowly his hand wrote out the words, "The Elder." It was his typical way of addressing himself at this time in his life, but on this day the words caused him to pause. The Elder. How much time had passed? It seemed like just yesterday he was the youngest member in a band of 12 who toured the countryside with Jesus, and the memories brought such a smile to his face. All the wonders they had witnessed, the teachings they had received, the ministry they had done, the lives they had seen forever changed by the man they called the Messiah. His life had certainly changed. He had been a simple fisherman when he first heard of Christ. He and his brother James would cast their nets on the Sea of Galilee, but they left it all behind when Jesus called them to follow him. He chuckled as he remembered the nickname that Jesus had given them, Sons of Thunder. Well, looking back, it was a good fit. After all, the two brothers had once asked their Lord to rain down thunder on an unhospitable Samaritan town. James. He still remembered the sinking feeling in his stomach when he learned his brother had been put to death at the hands of King Herod. He wondered at the senselessness of it all. The others in the band had soon followed: Peter, Andrew, Thomas, Philip, Matthew. Even the Apostle Paul was gone, put to death by the Emperor Nero. They had all left this earth and entered into their eternal reward. Only he remained, John, the last of the 12. Perhaps you can relate to this feeling of being alone, this dark sense of isolation and powerlessness, this belief that you're all on your own with no backup, no support in your time of need. Well, if you can relate to that feeling, I can tell you you're not alone. I don't mean you're not alone in knowing the feeling. I mean you're literally not alone. Actually, John would tell you the same. Just picture the aged apostle. He's now pastoring a ragtag collection of Christ's followers in Ephesus. His hair is silver, his hands are wrinkled, but his eyes are filled with hope. Yes, many of his friends are gone, but that has not stopped him from sharing the gospel. And John still loves to tell about those days when he traveled with Christ. The miracles that John relates run the gamut from a wedding oversight to a violent execution, from empty bellies to empty dreams, from abandoned hopes to buried friends. The stories fill us with wonder, but as we listen to them, we need to be careful to see them as John intended, not as entries in a history book, but as samples from God's playbook. John wrote down these miracles not to impress us, but to urge us to believe in the presence of Christ. As he stated, these stories are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. When we believe in Jesus, we have life, abundant, robust, and resilient life. We find strength beyond our strength. We accomplish tasks beyond our capacity. We see solutions beyond our wisdom. And we are never, ever alone. For as Jesus has promised, I'm with you always, to the end of the age. These words meant everything to John. I imagine he carried them with him throughout his days as he saw his friends and co-workers departing this world one by one. It's a message he and his congregation needed to hear frequently. You are never alone. And don't we need to know the same? When life gets dark and stormy, when we're facing an onslaught of challenges, we need to know that God is with us in those big crises of life. But beyond this, we need to trust that he's with us in the small things of life. Which brings us to the first miracle that John relates. The setting was a wedding in Cana, located 4 miles northeast of Jesus' hometown of Nazareth. John states, on the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Boy, the people in first century Palestine sure knew how to throw a party. None of this wedding and reception in one evening. John tells us that Jesus and his band arrived on the third day. Weddings lasted as long as 7 days, and the food and the wine were expected to last just as long. So we can understand the stress in Mary's voice when she came to Jesus and said, "They have no more wine." Now, you got to admit, as far as miracles go, this is setting the bar pretty low. Yes, in that culture, it would have caused extreme embarrassment for the host to run short of wine. The memory of the happy couple would be marred by the event. The host family would carry a stigma of shame. The families invited to the wedding would be angry, to say the least, at this lack of concern for them as guests. And that day, hospitality was reciprocated. If you threw a party and went to great expense for your guests, they expected you to do the same. Yet, this was far from a life and death struggle. Of all the needs of the people on the planet, bone-dry wine vats at a wedding don't even tip the scale. So why would John start things off with a sign that seems so ordinary? It's a good question. Perhaps even one that John's listeners asked. I can picture him smiling as he recounted Mary's words, "They have no more wine." I think this is actually the point, the ordinariness of it all. You know, Paul wrote, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." In everything, not just the big things, let your requests be made known to God. You know, Mary certainly modeled this. She didn't worry that the size of her request was too small to be answered. She simply connected the problem with the provider. The result was miraculous provision and restoration of what had been lost. But before that restoration took place, there is an interesting moment that deserves some attention. John tells us Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." Now, while scholars debate exactly how Jesus' response should be interpreted, the closest translation seems to be, "Mother, your concern and mine are not the same." No antagonism needed, but also not the reaction that Mary wanted. Apparently, Jesus carried an appointment book. He had a specific time in mind when he planned to reveal his power to the world, and this day in Cana was not that moment. He had gone to the wedding simply to attend a wedding. His to-do list for that day did not contain the entry, "Turn water into wine." Hence, Mary's request was met with hesitation. Now, maybe you've experienced the same. Perhaps you, like Mary, have explained your shortage to Jesus. "Lord, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. My tank is on empty. The doctor says it's bad news. It's been 20 years and I'm still single." Whatever the need, you've pleaded your case, but you didn't receive the response you wanted. And maybe you feel as if you didn't receive a response at all. No solution from Jesus. In those moments, how do you respond? Well, I like to look at how Mary responded. Did she stomp away in a huff? Did she declare that Jesus no longer loved her? Did she say, "All these years of doing your laundry and cooking your meals, and this is the thanks I get"? Well, she could have. She could have reacted in any of these ways and more. But she simply turned to the servants and said, "Do whatever he tells you." Translation, he's in charge, I'm not. He runs the world, I don't. He sees the future, I can't. I trust him. Whatever he says to you, do it. Mary made it clear that Jesus was the king of the wedding. 30 years of living with Jesus had taught her that he knew what he was doing. She had faith in him. She trusted that while he might not do exactly what she asked, he would always do exactly what was right. And her belief in him gave her the strength to say, whatever he chooses to do, I accept it. Mary's demonstration of faith caught Jesus' attention. Not only that, it changed his agenda. John relates what happens next. Now there were set there 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out now and take it to the master of the feast." And they took it. Notice here that Jesus sets up another opportunity for faith. The servants watched water go into the water pots, and when Jesus told them to draw some out now, there was no reason for them to expect anything but water to come out. Jesus was basically saying, you just poured water into those jars. Now take some of it out, bring it to your boss, and tell him it's wine. And many of us would hesitate at those words. Yet remarkably, the servants followed Jesus' instructions. And their faith mirrored Mary's. The resulting miracle brought about not just an abundance of wine, but good wine. John tells us that when the master of the feast had tasted it, he called the bridegroom and said, "Every man at the beginning sets out good wine, and when the guests have all well drunk, then the inferior. You have kept the good wine until now." Remember, this celebration had been going on for days. Most of the party guests were already drunk. Cooking wine would have been good enough to satiate the partygoers' thirst, but it was not good enough for Jesus. He wanted to do abundantly more than was asked. You know, something powerful happens when we likewise present our needs to Christ and trust him with the results. So let me ask you, have you made your requests known to God? Have you made a prayer out of your deficit? Jesus will tailor a response to your precise need. He's not a fast food cook. He's an accomplished chef who prepares unique blessings for unique situations. You see, a precise prayer gives Jesus the opportunity to remove all doubt about his love. Your problem becomes his pathway. The challenge you face is a canvas on which Christ can demonstrate his finest work. Now, maybe you're in the middle of something painful, even at this moment. Maybe it seems like you're all alone. Maybe it seems as if God isn't aware of what's happening. And even if he is, maybe it feels like he doesn't care. Well, we all know those feelings. We've all been there. But John's story of the wedding at Cana points out the truth that we're never alone. And Jesus cares about us in the great and small things of life. He even cared about the empty wine ladles. Picture John revealing the last line of this story. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The disciples saw the miracle and believed. A lifetime of service shows us that John was certainly counted among them. Even all these years later, the memory of the miraculous events he experienced with Jesus filled his thoughts and echoed through every word he spoke. Today, whatever you're facing, believe that Jesus is there with you. Know that he cares about every aspect of your life. Make your requests specific and trust Jesus to do not what you want, but to do what is best. And before you know it, you'll be raising a toast in honor of the one who hears even your ordinary requests and responds with extraordinary provision.